They don't make bikes like this anymore, do they? That makes me sound really old. This is my Canyon Aeroad CF SLX. It's actually a Pro, or X-Pro, not Pro now, I'm riding it, an X-Pro issue team bike. I bought it directly from Canyon DHB. A gentleman called Andy Tennant actually rode the Tour of Britain on this bike, and then after that, I've taken it to Third Cat Crit Glory on 2 occasions, so not sure what's the bigger accolade. Previous to Canyon DHB, I think these bikes were ridden by Team Katusha because there are quite a lot of chips on this bike, and underneath the chips there's a lot of red, which is exactly the same red as Katusha red. I don't think it's a red primer. But anyway, enough about the accolades or lack of accolades of this bike since I've had it. Let me talk to you about why I don't think there's anything that compares to this bike anymore, and why I think bikes like this and this bike are the best thing you can buy for crit and road racing. So I bought this for exactly that reason. I wanted a bike that I could ride chain gangs on, do road races on, and do the odd crit on. I didn't want something that cost the earth, but I wanted something that was relatively fast. So sourcing this frame, which had chips and damage on it from an X-Team, was perfect. I then have since crashed it a couple of times, so it doesn't matter at all. There's a few scuffs on it. The frame actually cost me £650. This was early 2020 when I sort of built this bike. The team wanted about £1,200 for the frames at the time, but a bit of a tense negotiation and for myself got it down to about £650. It's a size 58 and I'm 6'2", so there's not a huge market for those sorts of sizes, which I use to my advantage. Group set wise, SRAM Red ETAP 11 speed. I love this group set. I have it on the TT bike as well. It mixes with Shimano really easily, so I have the SRAM Red carbon crank, I have the SRAM Red ETAP front and rear meg, but I also have a Shimano 105 cassette because they're cheap to replace and easy to replace. I've got a YBN chain, which I get from my partner NRG Chains. It's waxed, got some ceramic bearing jockey wheels, so the drivetrain runs sweet as a nut. This is the sort of bike that I'm not really ever in the little ring. It's just for fast rides that I use it for, so it's not really like a climbing sort of setup. The 28 tooth cassette on the back is a bit overkill. I could get away with like a 25 or 26 really, just because of the parkours that I ride on. Handling of the bike is great. As I say, that it's an SLX frame, so the power transfer is supposed to be very good from the bottom bracket, and it's still quite compliant. And there are loads of buzzwords that I don't really know if, you know, are they true or not, but I do know when I get on this after riding my Endure race, the difference is night and day. This is more agile. This is more, you can feel like the power getting to the road, and it might just be psychological, but if it is, then it's still a thing, isn't it? Moving on to the brake set, another reason why I like the SRAM and Shimano 11 speed mix. I've got Ultegra brake calipers. I know that it's a, you know, conflicting group set design, but whatever. This build was built with cost in mind. The whole group set actually cost me about £800, including the shifters, so that takes the total cost of the bike up to about £1,400 in fact. Yeah, that's more likely. And then the wheel set, Zip 404 Firecrest clinchers. Now, these are a few years old. I bought them from a friend, so I got a decent deal on them, paired with some Vittoria Corsa Speed tyres because every watt counts, with some latex tubes. The wheels aren't tubeless ready. They're not the widest wheels in the world. They're not the most aero wheels in the world, but they're a mid-section carbon wheel set that didn't cost the earth, and actually I think look pretty nice on the bike, and they roll fast enough. Sure, I could maybe get some faster wheels that would make a tiny difference, but a lot of my racing is I'm in a bunch, or I'm off the front or off the back, so it's not the end of the world. I think this is a good wheel set to suit my ability range. The brake calipers are direct mount, which means there are 2 mounting points rather than 1, which means the brakes actually work. My other bike, which is a rim brake, has got a single mount, and they're not that good compared to this bike. This will stop better on carbon wheels than my other bike will do on aluminium wheels, just because of the leverage you get when you pull the lever. Moving on to the cockpit, I have got the Canyon H36 integrated bar and stem. It's a 41 centimeter wide bar with 110 mil stem. I know I've just mixed up measurements there, but you have to deal with it. Of course, being a third cat crit racer, I've tilted in the shifters ever so slightly, but I got this off Facebook Marketplace. It had a normal bar and stem when I got the bike, and they didn't cost the earth. This sort of thing, because there's so many of them around, parts are kicking around secondhand, you can really get a decent deal on them. Because of the nature in which I use this bike, I don't need to worry about strapping lights to it and whatever else. I've just got a computer mount, which is directly to the bars, and then a GoPro mount underneath, because what's the point in doing crits if I can't make a video about it? Moving further back, I've got a charge spoon saddle. I think this is the cheapest saddle you can buy in the market. These are about £15. ones, but given I only ride this bike for an hour at a time, it doesn't make much difference, to be honest, to the comfort levels. And I've got one bottle cage on here, but very often I run this without a bottle cage if I'm just doing a crit. It's not very often very hot in the UK, so I'll just run this without a bottle cage because every little bit of aero helps. I think the total cost for this bike was about £2,000, and it took a fair bit of like Facebook Marketplace haggling and sourcing parts and so on, but I don't think you can build or buy anything similar to this nowadays. And I also have in mind that I'm a triathlete racing bike racer, right? So it's inevitable that I'm going to stack it at some point and write this off. It's just going to happen at some point. I'm at peace with that. And I quite like the fact that if I do that, this frame doesn't owe me the earth. I know I'd have to spend out more money buying another replacement, but I don't feel nervous to throw this into a corner and let it affect my racing. I'd much rather just be able to commit to riding and know that I'm not, holding anything in reserve because I'm worried about, I'm riding a 10 grand bike that I can't replace, those sorts of things. So that's my Canyon Aero CF SLX. I'm going to ride it until I break it, and I don't have any plans to replace this bike anytime soon. I am half tempted by disc brakes, but not tempted enough to put my hand in my pocket and spend loads and loads of money. So let me know down below, what other bikes do you think aren't made like that anymore? Some that come to mind are like the Giant TCR perhaps, and some other ones, maybe an old SL6 Tarmac, is that the old last room brake one? I can't remember, but let me know down below. I'm looking forward to riding this bike a whole lot more in 2024. Also, as built there, it weighs 7 kilos with pedals.